It's proven, and we hear this, we know this, that boredom is good for children, even good for us. But if you're a planned out schedule type person, my next guest recommends you pencil in a time of your day to do nothing. Nothing at all. She's found there is an art to doing nothing. It's something she hopes to teach her kids, and she'll help us learn it today. Author and speaker Megan Feldman Bettencourt joining me through the screen. Hi, Miss Megan. Happy summer. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much. Happy summer to you.
We're so glad to have you. And I think as, you know, I think a fellow type A, I'm so happy for the pep talk on this topic and on this subject that we do hear a lot about. You told my producer you had an epiphany of sorts about boredom when you were planning your daughter's 5th birthday party?
Yes. So this was about 6 months ago, and I am someone who likes to be organized.
Yes.
I like to have plans.
Right.
But also, we really hadn't entertained for years. But my daughter was born a year before 2020 in 2019. And so she really spent her infancy and toddlerhood during the pandemic. And we had not had a party at our house since before the pandemic when she was an infant, a newborn, really. So I was extremely nervous about what we were going to do with all of these families in our suburban home. You know, I mean, all the parties we'd been to were at Chuck E. Cheese, or they were at, you know, a big trampoline park or somewhere that was very stimulating and entertaining. And so before the party, as we were setting up, I was so worried that people would be bored. And the embarrassing thing is that I was so worried that I actually started writing a run of show, like a party agenda for the 5-year-olds and the parents. And my husband came up to me and asked what I was doing. And in that moment, it's like, you know how sometimes you stand outside of yourself for a second and you kind of observe yourself? And in that moment, I hear myself answering him and saying, well, what do you think I'm doing? I'm writing
I'm
a
planning
run
a
of
party
show.
here. What are you doing?
Yeah. So we both looked at each other and started laughing. And then people in that moment, the first people came to the door, they came in, you know, we had snacks for the parents. We had drinks. We talked. The kids played. They did art. It was fine. Everyone had a great time.
It's always fine, but I get that worry of like, what if it's not fine and they're staring at me, blinking their eyes, and it's silent and awkward. I get that. What are some of the ways that we avoid boredom? We're pretty good at that, right? Avoiding just the dead time.
Absolutely. The funny thing is that so many of us, I think, are extremely busy. And a lot of us are busy doing things that feel like things we have to do, whether it's work or chores or, you know, sometimes parenting. It can be all of those things. And so many of us crave downtime and we crave doing nothing. And yet when a moment crops up that's kind of a break, we find ourselves filling it in.
Yeah, we don't know what to do with ourselves or with that break.
Yeah. We don't know what to do. And so we multitask. And, you know, I'm someone who makes a lot of phone calls, business or personal, while I'm driving, for example. Or I find myself just scrolling through the news and the headlines on my phone, or forcing myself to do more work or go work out, you know, that kind of that obsession with busyness and also accomplishment that I think our culture is.
I can meet you there, sister. The other day, it was just a couple days ago, I sat down on the couch, downtime, to watch Wild Kratts, my little boy Boston's current obsession. Favorite show. I love it too. I learn a lot too. But in between like breaks in the episode, I was jumping up to switch laundry. Like what? I can't just sit there. What's an episode? 27 minutes? You know what I mean? Uninterrupted and just enjoy that time. I'm rotating the dryer cycle. So I totally agree with what you're saying. You put in the research on this. How have you discovered this lack of boredom is affecting our mental health?
Yeah, so there's a couple bodies of research, and one is on adults that I think is really notable. So record-breaking numbers of Americans are reporting burnout in the workplace, and burnout is linked to depression and anxiety. So I think the figure on that was over 70% of Americans in the workplace said they felt burned out, and more than 50% were struggling to have a workplace home balance, a work personal balance. So that's the one thing about adults. The other about when it comes to kids and adolescents and teenagers, we've seen a major youth mental health crisis, and of course that doubled. So depression and anxiety doubled during the pandemic, but it really predated the pandemic. So starting in 2005, youth depression and anxiety started to rise pretty markedly. And then starting in 2011 and 2012, it just started to skyrocket.
And I think that's interesting. I'm glad you've highlighted that point. I've noted that as well, the timing of that uptick. And I think we're so quick to reference the pandemic, which of course, huge reference point, right? And everyone understands how that might have contributed, but it did start before that. And I think that's noteworthy.
Yes. So a lot of psychologists point to the fact that that line parallels the rise of first smartphones starting in 2005 and next social media starting in 2011 and 2012. So that is a big component of this. The other research piece that a lot of psychologists point to that's also related to what we're talking about in terms of boredom and downtime is that the amount of time that kids spend in unstructured play that's not orchestrated by adults has really plummeted over the last 6 decades. So that goes back even longer. But that means that we're robbing our kids of all the good things that come with downtime and boredom.
Well intended, but we're taking that away from them. Well, in the final minutes we have together, let's address both pieces quickly. Realistically, what does it look like to be bored for adults?
So the biggest thing is that it's more about being and less about doing. So when we can do something without a purpose or a goal, that gives our brain a rest and it enhances our ability to be creative. It recharges us. So that could be something like going for a short walk. It could be meditating, prayer. It could even be just focusing on what you're doing when you're doing it. Like if you're eating, just eat without watching television. Or like we are saying, when you're watching Wildcrats with your kids, you could just be there and
leave the laundry alone. Absolutely.
And leave the laundry. That's right.
And to that point, how can we encourage boredom in our home to help our kids? You have this line that I love, more nothing is better than no nothing at all. More nothing.
Yes, more nothing. And kids resist that, just as adults resist it. You know, my kids constantly, they'll complain at first, like, oh, I'm so bored, I'm so bored. And if I just hold firm and say, I understand, go find something to do. There's a lot of things.
That's key though, right? You've got to push past the pain point. Because it will be painful for both of you, inevitably.
That's right.
If you can push past that pain point, that's when the magic happens.
That's right. And they find creative things to do. They build forts. They, whittle. They play games together. They make games up. They use the creativity that they should be using, and they develop the independence that they should be developing.
Oh, the forts. I don't think my couch cushions have remained in place all summer long. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just saying it's the one thing that gets me, but it's fine. Megan, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight, the research you put into that, and also your personal experience around the topic.
Thank you so much. I love being with you. Appreciate it.
Loved it as well. You can find Megan's full article titled The Delicate Art of Doing Nothing on Deseret.com.